Welcome to Issues That Matter. My guest today is Scott Ritter, and we're going to talk about a really important subject, and that's Julian Assange. So, Scott, why don't you tell us, what he's facing and the ramifications?
I don't think Mr. Assange needs too much introduction, and I'm not going to pretend that I'm a lawyer and get into the legalities, the details of the legalities of the charges against him and things of that nature. Other people have done a far better job. What I'm going to talk about is the ramifications to Americans about the persecution, not the prosecution, but the persecution of Julian Assange by the United States. He's an Australian citizen, well known for his activism and his he formed an organization called um, WikiLeaks, and the purpose of WikiLeaks was to receive um, information that was embarrassing to, and it wasn't because to publish it because it's embarrassing. It was to publish it because Julian Assange believed that it was a duty and responsibility to inform the broader global public about the activities of governments that the governments are trying to hide from their own people and from the rest of the world. You know, that's what he was doing. So right off the bat, when you publish information that governments don't want you to publish, you've embarrassed the governments. Now, governments have a tendency to say when you embarrass them that you've actually impacted their national security. Um, okay, so sad, too bad. That's the problem of free speech. What is the thin line between national security and a citizen's right to know what their government's doing. And I will say right up front that Julian Assange didn't just step over that line; he knocked the line down. He just said that line doesn't exist. He doesn't care. Um, and bravo to him. Bravo to him. We have a situation today where um, governments look at the United States government. I know I'm straying off course here a little bit, but that's what I tend to do sometimes when on subjects that are complicated and that I care about. Um, Back when I was in the military, just a handful of people had the highest security clearances. It wasn't commonplace to hand out what we called SCI clearances, special compartmented information clearances. Um, and information was classified for a reason, for a legitimate reason. Meaning, if I had information about, say, a new satellite system on what it could do collection wise, man, you classified that. You didn't want the other guys to know about that, and you needed to control who knew about that. Okay, that's legitimate classification, and the product that was derived from that was classified as well because it gave away capabilities. If you took a look at a photograph or some other um, depiction of data that was derived from special collection means, um, you the enemy could figure out how you collected it. So yeah, you protect it. And the reality of live broadcasting in the Ritter household, the dogs have decided to take umbrage at something that's taking place outside. I apologize for that.
It's okay.
But today everything's classified. I mean, if you take a look at the number of people that have security clearances, that means that the data that they touch becomes classified. So everything becomes classified. And I have to tell you right now that it just simply violates the intent of classification. We overclassify. And as a result, there's a tendency on the part of policymakers to hide behind classification. That is, let's do something that we don't want to have to explain to anybody. We'll call it classified. We'll slap it with a secret or a top secret, classification, and therefore the public will not be allowed to discuss this issue further. Um, It's the garbage men that have come that have the angst of the dogs. I'm glad. So hopefully this will pass soon. The fact is, what Julian Assange has done. To give you an example, he did a lot of things. If you're a fan of WikiLeaks, and I'm a big fan of WikiLeaks. You know that for years he's published things that are invaluable to anybody who is seeking to have a broader insight into the policies of the United States. The decision to publish, and one of the things he's gotten in trouble on is his decision to publish the diplomatic cables of the United States, exposing America as one of the greatest liars of all time, that we literally can't be trusted. Now, we just had Michael McFaul do an interview with Mr. Mearsheimer, and in answering a question about, so you lied to the Ukrainians, McFaul said, "Of course we lied. Of course we lied. It's the real world out there." All right, Michael. So yeah, of course you lied, and such. But diplomats aren't supposed to lie. There's a reason why we have diplomats. That's so that they can be very assiduous in making sure that they represent the integrity of a nation without giving away the farm. Meaning there's a skill set associated with saying things that aren't a lie, but disguise what you're doing. It's called diplomacy. You're not a good one, Mr. McFaul. You're a horrible one. You're a liar. And apparently so were many other people, including Hillary Clinton, who was Secretary of State.
Okay, I do have a question, Scott. What's the difference between what Julian Assange is alleged to have done and back in the 60s? What's the difference between this and the Pentagon Papers?
None whatsoever. The U.S. government's going to make a claim, and this is what I was getting to. I apologize. I went off course. Thank you for back on course. What he's accused of doing is conspiring with somebody who at one time was called Bradley Manning. Today is known as Chelsea Manning. But back when Chelsea was Bradley, information was gathered by Mr. Manning and transferred to WikiLeaks and published. And it is alleged that Bradley Manning was assisted in retrieving the information and transferring it to WikiLeaks by Julian Assange, and that makes Julian Assange complicit in the theft of information. This is all digital age stuff. I'm not a lawyer, not going to pretend to be a lawyer. I'm just raising the red flag of BS on this one. No, and no again, because Daniel Ellsberg, back when he had the Pentagon Papers, conspired with both the Washington Post and the New York Times on how to get this information released. It was pre-digital age, so you didn't have computers, you didn't have passwords, you didn't have this. You simply had a whole bunch of guys in a hotel room with a stack of documents that were going through the documents by hand. That is the epitome of conspiracy. Working with journalists to cull through material to find out that which is of interest to be published. Turns out everything was of interest, and they published it all. The New York Times did. But this went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court defended the actions of both the New York Times and the Washington Post. They said this was freedom of speech. This is what America's about. This is stuff the American people had to know about. It was embarrassing to the American government. Of course it was. It exposed how utterly baseless our entire war was in Vietnam, how we had been lied to and lied to and lied to and lied to. It came too late. It should have come earlier when it could have had a real impact, but we, the people, needed to know. And the Supreme Court said, yes, you do need to know. This is protected speech. Well, we need to know everything Julian Assange published. It is invaluable. He published a videotape. The New York Times didn't have videotapes back then. He published a videotape showing American helicopter crews slaughtering a Reuters journalist team, slaughtering them. And that was embarrassing the United States. The United States classified that, I believe, at the top secret level, maybe at the secret level, but it was classified. Why? There was nothing on that videotape put national security at risk. Nothing. Didn't give away any capabilities. We know an Apache helicopter is capable of killing people on the ground. We know what weapon systems it employs. We know everything. But we didn't want to hear the callous nature of the exchange of the pilots with their command people, and this how freely they slaughtered people, understanding that that action was replicated time after time after time after time after time. We could continue with all the times you want in Iraq, in Afghanistan, the callous murder of civilians by American forces. This is what Julian Assange exposed to the world. This is the humiliation that America suffered, and as a result, we've charged him with espionage. That is, receiving classified information, then releasing to persons unauthorized. Tough luck, America. If you don't want to be embarrassed, don't do embarrassing things. End of story. Julian Assange has done us a huge favor. Now, I don't know what's going to happen. What we've seen is this isn't about, Democrats or Republicans. This is about America. He's been persecuted, not prosecuted, persecuted by administrations of both political parties. This is about America's humiliation. This is about America's debasement. And so far, it's taken place in a British court because this is an extradition hearing. This is about whether or not Britain will violate everything it claims to stand for and turn Julian Assange over to the United States so he can be further persecuted. It looks like Julian Assange has lost this case. There's some final appeals yet to go through, but he has lost his case. And if things stand as they are, unless a miracle occurs, he is going to be turned over to the United States for trial. Now, here's the interesting part. What will happen? Because I have to say, what should happen is the moment Julian Assange is brought before an American judge, the American judge opens up his case of Supreme Court precedents and says, why are you prosecuting this man? What crime has he committed? You have not made your case. This is a freedom of speech issue. First Amendment protection applies to all, and release him immediately. That's what should happen if America was truly a nation of laws. It's not going to happen that way, of course, because he's going to be brought before a hand-picked federal judge. And that federal judge is going to, of course, bind him away because he's a flight risk, because he's a journalist. He's so bad, he's so dangerous, he's going to be treated as if he is, one of the 9/11 perpetrators. And he's going to be put into solitary confinement where he may probably die because, hey, wake up, America, our prison system sucks. Everything about our prison system sucks. There's nothing good about it at all. It's attached to one of the most corrupt justice systems we've ever seen. Witness, of course, the ongoing persecution of Julian Assange. He's going to go to prison where he's going to be abused because that's what they do. Put pressure on people. The United States would like him to plead guilty so that they avoid trial they will probably lose. Because at the end of the day, good lawyers standing in front of a fair judge will make a First Amendment case and Julian Assange would be released. That is what the U.S. government doesn't want to happen. So they're going to put him in solitary confinement. They're going to strip search him every chance they get. They're going to abuse him, deny him food. They're going to subject him to abuse so that he breaks down and he pleads guilty. Because that's how the American justice system works. It's not about justice, it's about punishment. And in this case, they're punishing an innocent man for the crime of embarrassing the American government. This is a travesty. And every American journalist, I have to say this right up front, if you're an American journalist and you aren't screaming out First Amendment protections for Julian Assange, screaming it out, it should be the front page of everything that anybody publishes, then there goes you. Because I can guarantee you that if Assange is successfully persecuted, prosecuted on this issue, It's the end of journalism in America. Right now, American journalism is over, not because the government has ended it, but just because journalists decided to take the easiest way out and publish garbage over truth, to cave into public perceptions as opposed to the need to educate people about the truth. Well, Julian Assange's ongoing persecution is the greatest truth that Americans need to be exposed to today. And if journalism fails, if they fail to demand that this is a First Amendment issue and Assange be released, then the government, and we already see this tendency, the Ministry of Truth. What the heck is this? A Harry Potter movie? We created a Ministry of Truth here under the Biden administration, a government official who was empowered to determine what was misinformation, what was. You don't have that power, American government. You don't get to make those calls. That's not what happens in this country, but apparently it does because we've all surrendered. Julian Assange is the symbol of the future of America. He's not an American citizen, but this is an American cause. Freedom of speech, freedom of speech, freedom of speech. That's it. That's what this is all about. And and the fact that most Americans are just looking at this as sort of a casual event. Oh, Julian Assange, yeah, WikiLeaks, I remember him. Yeah, I read a lot of his stuff. That was interesting. That was really interesting. Yeah, but he committed espionage. Well, guess what? So did you if you read it, because you're an unauthorized recipient of classified information.
What does this mean for journalism going forward?
Well, journalism's already dying, but what it means is, I'll give you an example. Julian Assange deserves the Pulitzer Prize. End of story. He should be given the Pulitzer Prize for investigative journalism. He won't, but he deserves it. But what this means is that people like Seymour Hersh, who won a Pulitzer Prize for My Lie, understand that if Julian Assange is persecuted, that means that Seymour Hersh would probably have been persecuted as well for the stuff he wrote for the New York Times, for the New Yorker, and elsewhere. It means that James Risen would be persecuted. It means any one of these journalists that are out there today doing their job would be persecuted, because Assange is being prosecuted for actions that good American journalists carry out on a daily basis. It's their job to get information, especially from a government, as I said up front, which classifies everything to make it difficult for journalists to do their job. You classify things only because it is a genuine national security risk. And guess what? Most of the time, journalists are pretty cool about that, meaning that if they get a hold of some piece of information and they're told by the government, if you publish that, people will lose their lives or we're going to lose $1 billion asset. Most of the time, the editors go, yep, we understand that, and we will not publish this. We will hold back on this. But if you publish this, you're going to embarrass us. The editors are like, we don't care. We're in the business of telling the truth, and if the truth hurts, shouldn't have done it. But most journalistic outlets are responsible in that regard. It's not as though we have a bunch of people who are dying to receive information that hurts the United States. No, these are Americans. And they understand that freedom of speech comes with responsibilities. You can't, for instance, shout fire in a crowded theater. That's not free speech. And you can't publish information that harms the legitimate national security interests of the United States if it was protected under various classification authorities. But when you abuse classification, when you classify for the purpose of avoiding embarrassment, not protecting national security, then it's the job of a journalist to gain access to this information and publish it in a way that the American citizen can be informed so they can make decisions to hold people to account. That's how this wonderful little thing called democracy works. Mm-hmm. You remove that, we got nothing, because you can't have a democracy with a stupid citizenry. And I'm not talking about an inability to think. I'm talking about a brain that's been emptied of data. You can have the best functioning brain in the world, but if there's not input going in, then the good stuff can't come out, meaning they hold you accountable for what you have done. That's what makes democracy work. But if they're not told that something bad has happened, instead they just sit there and go, oh, everything's nice, everything's then we don't have a functioning democracy. We have a dictatorship that just dumbs people down.
Okay, we're talking about the media. But I want to go a step further and talk about uh, American citizens who dare to speak out, such as yourself. You know, I honestly, I worry about your safety. Um,
Oh, and I got Maverick protecting me right there. My wife's done. So,
but the thing is, people who speak out, they're treated like pariahs.
well, there's a couple aspects of it. One, um, let's get to the legal. What makes what's going on with Julian Assange so critical important is that if he is persecuted successfully, um, in effect, the United States government has criminalized what you and I are doing right now.
Okay.
They've criminalized it. Now, the other aspect though is the reality of this. I don't know about you. Do you have a money tree in your backyard? You just go out and shake anytime you need money. Say, yeah, I need $35 to get some groceries. I go shake money. And when
Right.
$35 comes, maybe 37 comes down. Now you have 2 extra bucks to get that piece of candy. It
Right.
doesn't work that way. Money doesn't grow on trees.
Mhm.
Money is the product of labor, of work. And for people who, like me at this stage of my life, have decided that I am going to write and earn a living from writing, if you decide to criminalize that process, criminalize my product, then I can't work. I don't. I don't get $35 to go out and buy groceries, or nowadays $64 to fill up my
Right.
gas. And this is what's happening. They are making it impossible for anybody who speaks critically of the government to earn a living. There are people, I don't know how to monetize YouTube. Wish I did, because apparently sometimes when I say things, they get a lot of YouTube attention.
Yes.
Had I learned how to monetize it, maybe, maybe I could go out and get a bigger pizza. But the point is, I don't do that, but people do. And I
Yes.
respect the people that do that. But here's the problem. I think there have been cases where I have appeared on somebody's YouTube channel and they have been deplatformed because they put me on for what I was saying. And deplatforming is another way of saying demonetizing. And I don't think the American people understand that. That if the government came out and said, we're going to attack the Albany Times Union, we're going to demonetize them, we're going to take away their ability to receive advertising dollars, we're going to do that because they ran a story that we found to be embarrassing. I'd like to believe that the citizens of the Capital District of Albany, of New York State, heck, the whole country would rise up and say, no, you don't get to do that. That's not what the government gets to do. And they're right. That's not what the government gets to do. But the government does this on a daily basis indirectly by putting pressure on YouTube through institutions or processes similar to the Ministry of Truth. Having a U.S. government Ministry of Truth make a determination that something is now classified as disinformation gives a green light to outlets like YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, etc. now to say, aha, what you've published is now disinformation, and we are going to punish you for publishing it by shutting it down. I got kicked off of Twitter for 2 tweets I wrote about Bucha, about an alleged massacre in Bucha. You notice nobody's talking about Bucha anymore. You want to know why? Because the whole world knows Ukraine did it. Nobody anymore is saying Ukraine was incapable. Everybody's going, nah, Ukraine probably did it. It looks like the Ukrainians did it. Yeah, they did it. I got kicked off of Twitter for that, for telling the truth. I would have gotten kicked off of Twitter for telling the truth about the missile attack on the Kramatorsk train station, and it was the Ukrainians that did it. But people now have become used to the fact that the Ukrainians are they're not angels. Well, they've got to fight them Russians. As long as they're killing Russians, they're good. We're going to give them weapons. But you're not allowed to say bad things about the Ukrainians, apparently, no matter what the truth is. You get deplatformed. And that's the state of American journalism today. Because I'll tell you right now, the New York Times will never tell the truth about Bucha. The Washington Post will never tell the truth about Bucha. Not now, maybe in 10 years when it's safe. When they suddenly want to win the Pulitzer Prize for investigative journalism, they'll write a piece about the Bucha cover-up. And some journalists will be lauded as a hero for cutting through the lies and the distortions. And now we know the truth of Bucha. And oh, you get a Pulitzer Prize. Yay, you're wonderful. Peabody, you're great. Oh, you're awful. Because that story should have been written now when it matters. But they don't write the stories now when it matters because they're playing the government game. So there is no journalism coming from the mainstream media. The only way you're going to get the truth is through outlets such as yours, where people come on and have conversations that are uncomfortable for the mainstream media, for uncomfortable for America. And if Julian Assange gets successfully persecuted / prosecuted, guess who's in the crosshairs, Cynthia? You are. I am.
Okay.
Welcome to the revolution. But the point is, it shouldn't be this way. We should have a nation where freedom of speech is embraced. I don't have to agree with you, Cynthia. And I'm sure there's stuff out there that we don't agree on.
I know there is.
It wouldn't be an interesting show
Right.
for people. But the point is, we're allowed to disagree. We are absolutely allowed to agree. It's an American right to disagree, and it's an American right to express disagreement. It doesn't criminalize it. Just because I disagree with you or you disagree with me doesn't make us bad people. It makes us thinking people. It makes us responsible citizens who dare ask questions. But they are criminalizing dissent. They are just, again, the American approach today towards information and debate, discussion, and dialogue would have criminalized almost every American patriot that spoke out in favor of independence back in the 18th century. Just imagine that. Thomas Jefferson is a criminal. Tom Paine, criminal. Sam Adams, criminal. John Adams, criminal. Hancock, criminal. Washington, criminal. They're all criminals because they're saying things the British government doesn't want them to say. It's treasonous. It's insurrectionists. No, it's called freedom of speech. And that's why we had a revolution. That's why we have a constitution. And that's why we're supposed to be the nation we are today. But we're not. We're drifting away from that. That's what journalists should be screaming about.
So,
not into the legal specifics of how Julian Assange got information from Bradley Manning, but the fact that the government has decided to criminalize the publication of data that is inconvenient, that is embarrassing, not that causes national security.
well, on that note, Scott, our time is up, and
You're censoring me, Cynthia. You're censoring me.
I'm sure we will talk again. So you've been listening to Scott Ritter. I'm Cynthia Pooler. This is Issues That Matter, and if you like this show, please subscribe to my YouTube page.